Welcome to Pretty Good at Talking. This is a companion podcast to the book Pretty Good at Walking, available wherever books are sold and in audio format too. We're doing a series where we interview people who appear in the book or connect to it in some way. If you have listened before, you'll know that we are talking about those intersections. Today I'm with SoGood, or as we came to know her, Aunt Katie. SoGood shows up at a very significant moment in our story of hiking the Pacific Crest Trail and became, as is obvious by the familial name, family. All right, here we are with SoGood, who is truly so good. Thanks for being with us.
So generous, Vince. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. It is just so good to see you.
I know it's been a long time.
You wouldn't look it though. You and Monica look like you're the same age.
Well, I use a purposely bad camera, to limit the
Yeah.
resolution.
You gotta tell me what camera brand that is. I will get one. Yeah.
We want to hear your story because you show up in our book all over the place. You were so important to our experience of the Pacific Crest Trail. And I just really would love to get to hear your story about your experience on the Pacific Crest Trail. What led you to it? Why'd you do it? Maybe that's as good a place to start as any.
Yeah, sure. I really didn't start hiking until a couple years before the trail. And I guess I'll start there. I did a lot of international travel in high school and in college, and was really kind of thinking about the environment and kind of my place in the world. And I felt like I'd traveled all these places and I'd seen all these things, but I had no understanding at all of my own backyard. And I'd also, flown all these places and thought about, the impacts of air travel on the environment. And was like, well, why don't I bike places? And I didn't know how to bike. And then I started learning about other ways of exploring, and there was like this rumor of the Appalachian Trail that I'd heard about maybe in, you know, 2013. Like, I don't really know what it is, but maybe I want to check it out. And then I got really lucky and fell into hiking in about 2014. And I watched a documentary on Netflix called Mile and a Half. I don't know if you've seen it. It's all about the John Muir Trail, and a couple of people that decided to hike it. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And I saw that they were, at least, a couple of the people were also kind of slow. And, they had a lot of gear, and, maybe we're just taking on this new experience, and that maybe I could do that too. And so then I started looking into permits for the JMT. I had planned to go with a friend, and that fell through in 2015 because they had an injury. And then in 2016, it was like, nope, I am going. I have to go this year. And I got permits for both of us. And if they decided not to go, that was fine. But I was absolutely going. And sure enough, permit day came, and I requested the time off work. And June 12th, I started northbound on the John Muir Trail, which is A, early, and B, the opposite direction of most people. But I had a really luxurious itinerary. I was able to spend 25 days heading northbound in the Sierra. And what I didn't expect on the trail was that there would be all these other people there. And specifically, I was traveling northbound at the same time as all the northbound PCT hikers. So I started meeting all these people that were on this big journey that I'd never even heard of. Like, what are you doing? You're going further than Mount Whitney and Yosemite. And so I got to talk to them and learn what they were doing. And I got to the end of the JMT, and I really didn't want to stop. I really fell in love with it, being able to move with my own 2 feet under me, to be with all these other people where suddenly we're all on a level playing field. Like, it didn't matter where you came from or what your upbringing was, or what you did for work or how much money you had. This It was just up to you and your own feet and your determination, and a little bit of luck from avoiding injury and having good weather, and just really having the gumption to see it all the way through. So I really enjoyed just like being out there with everyone who was working towards this common goal. Um, And anyway, long story short, I thought that, maybe when I got to the end of the JMT, I would just keep walking with them. Even though I didn't start in Mexico, maybe I could just keep going. Um, but I
Permit, no
had,
permit, who cares? I'm going.
I know, I didn't know that was even a thing,
Hmm.
I was just so new. Oh, I mean, so new, Vince. My pack was, I waited at Whitney Portal, which they have like a scale that you can hang your pack on. I mean, giant Osprey pack, first off, and my scale weighed 45 pounds. I think
Whoa, is that the weight at full
yeah,
load?
the scale
Yeah.
read 45 pounds. It, yes, including 3 liters of water. And I don't know why I carried 3 liters of water because there was water the whole way up. But I like to understand how I could actively filter my water. I mean, I had micro spikes, I had every layer, I had 2 tank tops and 2 shirts. And, I already thought that I had it pared down quite a bit. I had my bear canister. I mean, it was heavy. And it was in hindsight embarrassing, but an important part of the learning process. So yeah,
Well,
yeah.
at least you had 25 days.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was great. The real yeah, there was so many ironies about that, but I was also really stoked about preparing my own food. So I dehydrated quite a bit and planned all these really healthful meals. Monica would have been so proud of me in hindsight. And I like was just thinking, oh, 3 meals a day, this is all I need. But when you're only traveling, I didn't do any like calorie calculations or anything. And looking back on it, I've packed like 1,600 calories a day. And I've got this, I'm trekking this 40-pound pack through the mountains. And I had all my resupplies plans. And Vince, I was so hungry. And then Ray Lakes, which is one of the most iconic spots in the Sierra. I know you and Monica have memories there. And then, of course, we walked by it together like several years later. But I took a whole 0 day at Ray Lakes, and it was June 21st on the summer solstice. So I'm like all day, I'm sitting still with my food, with my bear bin, like so hungry with nothing else to do besides like try not to eat my food. It was so on the longest day of the year. So I learned a lot about the kind of food I want to eat on trail after that hike. um, but yeah, I had before I left on the John Muir Trail, I'd applied for a job, a new job that I was really interested in, and I thought, well, if I don't get this job, then I'll just keep hiking. I will indeed continue north on the Pacific Crest Trail to Canada. Um, and I'm just going to go home and change my boots to trail runners and wear shorts instead of pants, and that'll be that. I will keep hiking. But I got the job, so I wound up staying in Arizona, which is where I was from, and building a new career in Phoenix instead of continuing on my hike. And in my interview for this job, they said, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" And I said, hiking the Pacific Crest Trail for the fifth time. And somehow they hired me anyway. But um, yeah, it was pretty good. So I was there for 4 years, and I still really wanted to do the PCT. And I had finally, put the pieces together to actually go hike the PCT. I had gotten a permit, and just the way the permits worked out, southbound was the way it was going to be. I had a big event for work in that I was hosting in April, so I wouldn't be able to start northbound until May. So the cards stacked in the favor of a southbound trip. And then um, I had a fair amount of experience with snow travel, so I wasn't too worried about, Washington being too snowy for the start of the hike. And then um, I put in my notice at work, and my boss said, how about you just take a leave of absence instead? And I said, sure. So I just was able to drop my life in Phoenix the exact way that it was. I told my landlord that I was leaving, and he said, how about you just pay a reduced rent and leave all your stuff in the house while you're hiking? And I said, okay. So I was just able to put my life as I knew it and as I loved it on hold to hike the PCT. And I think we all kind of talk about how the trail provides. And the trail provided for me from the very beginning. Everything just really fell into place. And sure, I did a lot of work and made a lot of hard decisions to make it happen, but nonetheless, everything fell into place. And I was able to set out on this journey of my dreams. It was the dream. That was what I wanted to do, was hike the PCT.
Wow. Yeah. And you
So
wouldn't have met any southbounders when you were doing the JMT.
no, not in early June. I met some southbound JMT hikers. They were scared. They were so scared. But yeah, met a handful of them, and especially by the time I was in Yosemite. But yeah, no southbound PCT hikers. And actually, some of the people that I traveled with through the Sierra, I still, keep in contact with, people who I really adore. There's yeah, just really, really neat. And, other people that taught me how to care for my blisters. And I remember the way I had these big boots and they really hurt. And a stranger at Vermilion Valley Resort said, I think I saw a pair of sandals on top of the dumpster. They just might fit you. And looking back on it years later, there's no way he found these brand new Chaco sandals on top of a dumpster. They must have been his sandals that he went and got for me, because I needed something other than my boots to walk with. So, um, even just starting on that short trail, I just had a great experience that I had to come back to. So that's a long answer.
Well, yeah, but there's one little piece that I feel like you said you reserved two permits and we're going whether or not they came.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so they didn't come and I decided I was going. Yeah, that's so funny. Um, but a really special part of that trip was the second permit. Wound up. I had a really good friend who was hiking on the Arizona Trail, and that was his first through hike. And he got the trail name Maniac, and it just is so fitting. But um, he his journey on the AZT was so hard. He started dehydrated and sick for days with an 80-pound pack at the Arizona Mexico border, and started hiking north, and just really had this great journey. And he wasn't ready to stop hiking when he got to the Utah border. So I said, I got this permit. If you want to come along, you can. I can prep some of our food, or I at least have a lot of the planning in place, and we can work on it together. And so he wound up taking the other permit, and we started on the same day. And we hiked together a little bit, especially at the beginning, but we mostly wound up hiking our own hikes throughout the Sierra. But that whole the 0 day at Ray Lakes, we were there all day together, and it was definitely one of the best days of my life. And it was so cool.
That's great. Other
As
than
he
eating
had
your stomach lining all day long, that's
Yeah,
great.
oh my God, yeah, but at least he was eating his too. But he didn't heed my advice about bringing bug spray, and the mosquitoes were out full force, and boy, he had constellations all over his body. That was so insane, so funny. But yeah, so Maniac and I hiked together for a while, and then he actually passed away shortly after finishing the
That's terrible.
JMT. So
What?
yeah, it
Wow.
just a lot of really special memories, and especially I know you and Monica had so many like strong connections to Ray Lakes, and I still hold Ray Lakes super duper close. Just because I had this really special day there with one of my really good friends. And it was a beautiful place, and just I remember the PCT hikers passing us by and just being so jealous, because who gets to spend a 0 day on trail in these beautiful places? Um, Only the stupid people that only packed less than 2,000 calories a day of food, because that's all we could carry. So yeah, it was a really it was great. I was mostly hiking alone, but had one of my best friends was out there with me, so really special.
Where did you camp? Was it near where we ended up camping as well?
Uh, you know, I don't think so. I think we were at like one at Middle Ray Lake area. I admittedly don't remember the name exactly. I have. I could describe what it looks like. It's burned in my
Mm-hmm.
mind. And the flowers,
Mm-hmm. Is it
yeah,
near that cluster of rocks kind of on a bend in the middle of that lake that I remember seeing?
that sounds about
Mm.
right. I remember the flowers were just like perfect pink little droplets. Uh, and the vegetation was so green. Um, and we, yeah, we jumped into the freezing cold water and then we didn't realize we were getting sunburned as we dried off. And it was a very memorable day in the end.
Man, wow. So did you end up picking up your trail name on that trail?
Yeah, actually, so Maniac is who named me. We were coming over Kearsarge Pass northbound, and for anyone that's not familiar with Kearsarge Pass, it is especially if you're on the JMT, I think probably a lot less for PCT, but it is like the scary spot that holds snow like really late into the summer and can be really icy. And there's just this really severe drop off above and below it, and there's just like this carved out rock path that takes you, over this icy chute of death up and over to the top of the pass. So you're at this really high exposed spot. And I mentioned I'd wanted to do the JMT for a long time. So I'd spent hours, days, weeks, months, just like dreading what Kearsarge Pass was going to look like when I got there. So as we pushed it, I was really, really stressed. And then finally we came up and over the pass and clunked down in the snow after crossing it. And it was no big deal at all. It was a very, very benign pass. Um, and I had been neglecting myself and hadn't put on sunscreen or put on chapstick and I'd just been really overwhelmed by the beauty all around me on the JMT and had just never seen anywhere like that before. It was a postcard everywhere I looked, and so I was kind of at a loss of words for what could say. And so every time I'd look around, I'd just say, "Wow, it's so good! It's so good!" And I clunked down over on the side of the pass and I put on my chapstick and was just like totally just basking and the stress being released. And I said, "Wow, you guys, this is," and Maniac said, "We know it's so good, and so are you."
Good.
So there it stuck.
That's the way you got your trail name? That's great. I thought, of course, of course I
Yeah,
tell it differently
yeah.
in the book because I have to take some poetic license, but I had it connected to food, so I had it connected to
It makes
calories
sense.
for So Good. Wasn't that your username on Instagram?
Yeah. And that's kind of what I worked it into. All of my career has been in food and local food systems, and um, so I chose to document my through hikes through the food that I ate. So even on the JMT, I was always taking pictures of my food,
Yeah.
just like I do in town. Um,
It would be so weird to think about hiking through there northbound, especially with higher water. You'd have had a lot higher water to cross.
yeah, yeah. Actually, I think that's the closest to death that I've ever been that I know of. Was
Yeah?
crossing Evolution Creek. I remember
Wow.
when we crossed it together, it was just like wading up to our ankles, just a
Mm-hmm.
little splish splash. But yeah, we did everything wrong, and we got to a notoriously dangerous creek crossing at 6 p.m. The end of the day after all the snow had been melting and flowing into the creek all day. So it meant the flow was stronger and higher at its peak point of the day, and we knew it was high, but it looked reasonable. So I was hiking with my friend Hodgepodge, and we decided that we would, uh, go up trail and find a place that was a little bit shallower to cross. And then a couple of burly men showed up and decided, oh, well, why don't we just cross right here at the trail crossing? And so the five of us linked arms and unbuckled our packs so that way if our packs floated away, we could let them go and we could swim to safety or um, and we all started crossing in our big chain. And sure enough, we weren't even halfway across before my pack went up, and it wasn't 5 seconds later before my feet went up behind it, and I was just floating based on this chain. And I mean, it was strong, and if it wasn't for the
How
adrenaline,
high up was it? Your neck?
oh, I was swimming. Oh yeah, I was totally submerged. I was wet. Oh, it was it was it was so scary because I mean I had nothing to grab onto, and um we had at the front of our line was a different maniac, ironically enough, and he pulled all five of us out, and I had Maverick, who's another super avid through hiker and section hiker, and he now lives in the Salt Lake area. But he was at the end of the train, and they both kept us all anchored well enough to get safely across. And it was terrifying. We built an emergency fire, and we all just huddled around it and dried off our stuff and camped right there the rest of the night. It was yeah, the water crossing was very memorable, and a little bit different on our southbound journey in October. So
My
yeah.
goodness, that would be miserable and so cold.
Hmm.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I had no joke.
Yeah.
That's it. How did you decide on a start date?
I think I was watching the Hearts Pass
Mm.
Snowtell data, and the all the PCT forums said, 2 weeks after Hearts Pass says zero, that's go time. So I decided on I think it was the 4th of July, and that was how I got my data. And the the way the world works, I wound up starting July 1st because my friends convinced me that no one was going to check my permit anyway. So maybe yeah, it must have been the first.
Oh, you started one day ahead of us. We start on the second.
I we we left the border on the third, so and we camped at the border. So I must have started at the first. Yeah, yeah, I started at Hearts Pass on the
Yeah, you
first.
did, and that's great.
So yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know that. Because did you guys, weren't there two ways to go north? Did you guys go the normal way or did you take the rogue way? Do you know what I'm talking about?
We did
Okay.
not take
I,
the alternate. Yes, we started at Harts Pass right on trail. Stay the best. Did you run into Columbus and Blue Bear and Salty?
yeah, yeah.
I think they started that way. They took the ferry across
Okay.
and they were hiking up, and apparently the trail had not been maintained and they got lost. That's why Salty gave him the name Columbus, because he said he got lost searching for the border.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. Yeah, it sounded pretty adventurous going that way. I'm glad I didn't bite off more than I could chew.
No, yeah, I was fine. I was just fine with that, especially with kids. Although, I mean, honestly, I didn't know what I was getting into, that it was higher miles going south.
I think so. Looking back, even at just like my old health data on my phone, my trek through Washington is like my highest performing data ever. Like in all the hiking I've done since then, my month in Washington what had the highest output. Like I was just so eager to crank through it. It's all downhill from there.
Yeah, because it
Yeah.
was hard to know how to approach that Washington stuff because we were around everybody that was hiking 20 miles a day and we were just barely, we barely surviving getting that stuff done. But
I was training in Colorado, and we came across a guy in. He was like, "Oh, you're starting southbound in the Cascades. You're never gonna make it." So, Cake, my boyfriend, he that's our running joke now is if any, you're never gonna make it. So, just quoting this random guy in Colorado. That's what he said.
that's great. Yeah. And you were alone. You started alone, or had you met anybody that you were going to hike with?
So I started with friends. So Cake, he hiked the PCT northbound in 2017, and I met him after his hike, and he committed to starting the PCT with me. So he went from Hearts Pass to the border, back down to Hearts Pass. So that's the first 60-ish miles or so. And then I have a really good friend that's based in Portland, and he's a really avid mountaineer, and he's not super excited about backpacking, but I somehow convinced him to hike the first 200 miles with me through like the Glacier Peak Wilderness. So he started with us too. So it was the three of us that did the first 60 miles together, and then my my friend who became known Two Pots, short for Two Pots, No Water Bottle, because he didn't bring a water bottle on the trail.
Mm-hmm.
He
Deliberately.
deliberately, yeah, but he had two pots. He just assumed there'd always be water wherever we were. So he's one of the most capable and wonderful humans. So it's so ironic. But he hiked with me to uh, gosh, what would that have been? The Duns, the Dinmores. No,
Dinsmore's, yeah, yeah.
Dinsmores,
Stevens
yeah.
Pass,
Yep,
Dinsmore's, yeah,
Stevens Pass.
yeah.
So,
You,
yeah, I was really grateful that both of them were able to come with me. I knew that, if I could get through that deep wilderness alone, that I would be able to make the rest of the hike on my own. So, um, Two Pots left very enthusiastically when he got to his ending point, and then it was just me from the rest of the way. And Cake was able to meet me a couple more times as his school schedule allowed on the trail. Um, and that was really fulfilling. But for the most of the part, I was hiking by myself.
wow, that's something. The Glacier Peak, remember a lot of people were warning us about that section coming into it. They were expressing nervousness about me taking my kids through that. I think maybe because it was more remote or something like that, but we did start into Glacier Peak um, with several warnings about some water crossing or something like that. I don't know if that was the case while you were there.
Yeah, no particular warnings. Fortunately, at that point, I kind of blended in as a hiker. I wasn't, I wasn't toting around some kids,
That's true.
so people weren't as worried about me.
That's
But
true. Yeah. Well, so you said you weighed in at 40 pounds plus with your pack for the previous trail.
yeah,
You did quite a bit of adjusting. In fact, you were a significant part of our switch to gossamer gear because I was jealous
yeah.
always of your pack when I saw it. But what was your weight like then coming into the PCT?
I think for Northern Washington, I was a little bit heavier. I think I had like 13 and a half pounds,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
I had some
Yeah.
things like a nice camera, and that's base weight, not including my water and food in that case. And I still had my REI sleeping bag, but it condensed super well and was all down and was really warm. And I was really happy with it. But yeah, definitely got much lighter. Learned how to pack better, not bring stuffed sacks, those kinds of things. All those ounces that are better left at home.
Yeah, that's great. So how
So
was Washington for you?
yeah, it
Did
was
you
good.
like Washington generally?
Oh, it was extraordinary. Just really beautiful
Yeah.
landscapes, and
Mm-hmm.
um, just it rains and then it got sunny, and just you'd come around a bend and there would suddenly be a giant volcano on the horizon. That was what a cool way to track your progress, is how close are you to the next volcano. Just these really great markers for um, for your progress along the trail. And I'd climbed Rainier a couple times before, and Mount Adams. And then I knew when I finished hiking Washington on the PCT, Two Pots Cake and they picked me up at Cascade Locks, and then we drove back up to Glacier Peak and climbed Glacier Peak, and yeah, and then they dropped me back off at Cascade Locks to keep hiking south, and so it was just really cool to like be walking between all these places that I'd been to in some way, shape, or form previously, and you know got to walk between them. That was really cool. um, and then I'd also gone to college in Washington, so I learned quite a bit about like the biology and geology of the region. So to walk through it uh, at a much slower pace was pretty fulfilling too. So yeah, Washington was just epic.
Yeah, yeah, connecting up those regions.
Yeah.
How were the mosquitoes for you?
Oh gosh. Well, they say that the best mountaineers and the best hikers have the worst memories. So I've tried to forget every mosquito I've ever met. I think the worst. Oh yeah, okay. The worst were just north of Mount Adams. I remember everyone just doing the hokiest, craziest dances, trying to smack them off, and just not wanting to stop to get away from them. How about you guys? Where did you get the
Hmm.
worst of them?
Well, I was trying to think where it was. I think it was coming out of Stevens Pass, maybe that next section in there. When you kind of walk beside those boggy
Ooh.
ponds, everything stops flowing quite
That sounds right.
as rapidly when you hit those ponds. And Georgie was the one doing the dances at that point mostly. Well, we were all pretty miserable, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
but we only had 4 or 5 days of really bad. And the worst part was we were starting to cross paths with the fastest of the northbounders who
Mm-hmm.
would say the mosquitoes were as bad all the way through Oregon. And so we didn't know what to anticipate. We thought we were going to have to endure it for another 400 miles, but it turned out it was only miserable for about
That's
4 or 5 days.
horrible.
And then after
Ugh.
that, it started to lighten up again, so it wasn't too it wasn't too bad.
It,
Oh, do you remember walking through the recent burn that was about
yeah,
14 or 15 miles of
absolutely.
trail? I remember thinking how
That's
eerie that was, kind of
totally
walking on
eerie.
ash for that long. But the flowers were amazing, even through there. They
Yeah.
were shooting up really quickly. Did you know your flora and fauna? Were you coming in there prepared and knowing everything?
Certainly not an expert, but able to understand basic post-fire succession and the plants that come up first and then second, third, and I had context, but definitely nothing specific.
Hmm. So after the start of your hike, the part where you had companions, did you
Mhm.
walk with anyone after that, after they left?
Overall, folks that I traveled with were few and far between. Hopscotching with everybody through most of the
Mm-hmm.
trail, but then, of course, I you know, the part of the hike I remember the most is the part where I was actually hiking with people, which was when I met your family. And you guys were the
Okay.
only ones that I wound up
Mm-hmm.
walking a significant amount of time with. We knew we walked together quite a bit outside of Sayad Valley in California. And then, first met you in Oregon and didn't have a lot of miles together at the time, but I um, you know, got to leapfrog a little bit in there, and then in California, by the time I hit the Sierra, um, I was so I was so excited to see you guys. I had seen your footprints for so many miles leading up to them. So when I finally caught up to you guys and then had the chance to hike with you, it was like, oh yeah, it's a no-brainer. So then trekked with you guys through the Sierra, and after that, definitely had some folks here and there. I had Neil and Jenna, who I met up in Northern Washington, and then I wound up reconnecting with them in Central and Southern California. And of course, a lot of meaningful folks along the way. But in terms of significant mileage, it was exclusively my trail family, the Strawbridges.
Were you nervous at all being alone out there?
I don't think so. It never really occurred to me to be nervous. Everything,
Mm-hmm.
um, everything was just easy. It was where I always wanted to be, and I got there, and it was still where I wanted to be. So I never got nervous. The only time I got nervous was far Southern California, when we started to cross quite a few roads, and I started to see like a lot more off-road vehicles and a lot more people that were out midweek and on the weekends, just kind of that human factor being present. But those were the only times I ever, really recognized that I was alone or in a place that I maybe didn't want to be. I think the only other place I would have been scared to be alone was when I was with you guys and I wasn't alone. So I lucked out on that one.
One night I one night I hiked by myself in the dark alone for a couple hours, and I just thought this is
Mm,
a different experience. I'd always been with somebody. The woods were a little louder than I expected them to
yeah.
be. And no, I heard more things than I'd been hearing. I didn't expect to be nervous at all. I imagined that the trail experience alone is much different, but I would also imagine it probably whatever level of anxiety you carry dissipates after a while. You just get really comfortable with it over time.
Yeah, I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. Just getting used to a certain level of noise and um, it was there are benefits to being on my own timeline and eating when I want to eat, stopping when I want to stop. Yeah.
What was the typical SoGood pace? What's the typical day in the life on trail of SoGood?
Oh man, wake up, Eat some food, hike, eat some food, stop, eat some food, hike, eat some food, and stop and sleep.
So it doesn't matter when it is, it's just whenever you wake up, that's when the hiking starts.
That, yeah, I set an alarm quite a bit, and I really did hike, especially as we got closer to Mexico. I hiked
Hmm.
pretty late into the night, and I was just kind of hiking, felt like I was hiking all the time. And I really wouldn't bed down until like 8:30 or 9. And I don't recall the exact time of sunset, but I feel like it was like 6:30 or so by November. Yeah,
It's late. No, it was setting early.
yeah. Just it felt like I had to get there, you know. I didn't. Uh,
Yeah, it was probably 5:30. So you were walking a lot in the dark in Southern California. It didn't feel as bad though. The sky above you is so big and
yeah,
wide, and there's lights from the cities down below, and
yeah,
it
that's
just doesn't
true.
feel quite as scary as being in the forest at night.
Especially the desert in the fall. Just that golden hour is really more like a couple hours, and so you just have a long time of this like really peaceful, beautiful glow. So that helps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, so let's go back, way back up to Oregon, because I cheated in the book again with another so good conflation. I think we met you at Big Lake. Am I right about that?
Yes, I know we did. I don't know how. Like, I obviously didn't get your name or June's name until later. I know you were doing laundry when I wanted to be doing laundry, but I don't remember if our laundry was together or not. Okay.
And that was the thing that I made up. It was another girl that did laundry with Monica. So we must have butted in front of you and gotten our laundry with her. And then we accidentally took something, some article of clothing of hers with us, and she caught up to us past
Oh,
the
how funny.
volcanic rock, past Belden Crater or whatever. So Belknap Crater, she caught up to us and got that back from us at that lunch after that. So it was pretty funny. But it wasn't you.
That
But I
works
made
for
it you
me.
sharing the laundry with Monica.
Yes,
I
yeah.
did know
And
that you were there at the A-frame.
I remember that I shared the laundry with someone who's had really, really dirty clothes. So it could have been Henry. So
Probably so. That definitely would be Henry if it was dirty. That's great. So, yeah, so then this is significant for me. But that next day, I want to say it was that very next day, we crossed the lava and climbed up out of there. I remember we stopped at water and it was probably 6:30 at night. I told them that we needed 8 more miles. Our waypoint target was a pond. We were really trying to push at that point because we were convinced we weren't going to make it through the Sierra before winter. And we had a lot of people like your friend that you met in
mhm.
Colorado telling us we'd never make it. And so we were really trying to push, and not just because they were saying it, but they were actually right.
Yeah.
We really did need to get there. So we were trying to kind of, high step it, and we had a bad interaction. Monica and June were crossways. Everybody left me and June, and then I managed to get another
Yeah.
mile out of her, and then she crashed to the ground. Well, you could probably tell how bad off we were. When you came by, I
Hmm.
said, well, June is not having a good night.
Which was evident, self-evident. I saw you. Yeah, that was that same day because it was right before we got to the Obsidian, which is where I ran into you in June. But yeah, it was before that, and I had passed Henry at the junction, who had decided that the view was not worth the extra hike through. It's so funny putting all the pieces together now because that's so Henry. But at the time, I thought that's funny. There's a child sitting here all by himself while his family's up ahead on the trail, which is no problem. But it was funny at the time.
We had
But
seen you
so
earlier.
yeah.
Did we see you earlier because we went to that overlook, or was that the next day?
Oh yeah.
Also, I think I'm remembering some sort of theme, and this may be asking too much of both of our memories, but I feel like somebody lost a water bottle that you picked up behind us
Got the water
after that.
bottle. That yeah, that's
Is it
funny.
possible? Because I didn't
Yeah.
include in the book the story about how you found Henry's hat. It was so funny because you said, "Oh, hey, I think I found a hat that belongs to you, Henry."
I
And
believe
he's
it.
like, "Yeah, nope, not mine." And he
Yeah.
looks in his bag. He's like, yep, yep, that's mine.
Oh,
We were
absolutely.
dropping things all the time. So the chances are good that if you were behind us, you found something. Do you remember, do you have memory of that interaction with June when she was crashed?
Yeah, June was just sitting on the side of the trail and definitely tears in her eyes. And you know, I don't have much to offer. You know, some crushed granola bars. You know, not much to make any kid's day better. But I was happy to chat with you guys. And you said, you know, June's not having a great day, and I said, you know, June, really? Your name's June? And you know, I think anyone who knows me would, you know, uh, slap me on the back for telling someone, because it's, you know, most people don't think of it as the compliment that it actually is. But I had a childhood goat that was named June, and she was just my closest friend in the herd, and just the kindest, most beautiful goat. And she was my prize show goat, and I just loved her so much. And June was actually also June the goat. Was also named after my grandmother who raised goats. So um, anyway, the name June and goats in general just have had a really significant part of my life. So I, of course, told June that on the spot. And much to my great luck, she also loved goats. So it was it wasn't as insulting as someone else might have taken it to be, because I was just overjoyed to meet someone named June. I got really lucky that it resonated with her. So.
And that's how we got to camp with you that night up by Waypoint Pond. And
Ponds. Yep. Yep. I
yeah, well, it was nice because we could send our message with you. We did not have any way to communicate with the others. We just said, let them know we're coming eventually. Mm-hmm.
Yep. We reconvened at Pond. June kept walking.
Yeah, she made it.
I'm
But then
so glad
I
she
guess I
did.
don't remember. Did you leave out earlier that next morning?
Gosh, I guess I must have. I remember hiking most of that day alone. The
Mm-hmm.
next day was my nephew's birthday, and he's my only nephew, so I am Aunt Kate to him. And I was feeling very sorry for myself for not being with my family. So there's a good chance that I was alone, feeling sorry for myself instead of being with this really nice family that I just met.
I wish you'd
there's
walked with us that day. We
there's a
fell
good
apart
chance.
again not too long after that. June had
Yeah.
another meltdown, and we could have used some other cheer up. But I think the next time we ran into you was down in Shelter Cove. Is that right?
Yeah.
I think that's right. And what's fun for me now is I'm putting stories together. Because when we ran into you at Shelter Cove, I had shin splints.
Yeah, that sounds
But not
right.
only did I have shin splints, we had a package that didn't deliver at Shelter Cove.
With all your food for the next section.
Like those magical chacos that showed up on top of a food box for you on the JMT. You made something appear for us. You came down, walked across the lawn to us, and said, "Look what I found in the hiker box." And it was a cold beer, as if there were a cold beer in the hiker box. And I think mac and cheese, a bowl of mac and cheese. And the beer,
Oh, I had actually forgotten about that, so I was glad that you included it in the book, because I was reminded. But it actually was in the hiker box, so I just showed up at the right time, right place. What can I say?
the cold beer was in the hiker box.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I also put
Ha
it
ha
there,
ha.
but that's
Truly. That was a
yeah,
miserable day.
less than
I
a
can hardly
second.
remember it except that Monica wanted a shower. I remember that. It was just a rough day, but there were a lot of people there. Like I can remember running into a lot of people that we later saw down the trail, like Tig and Grizz, and we who was the guy? He from Korea and was walking for a cause. It was like the cause was for some kids that had died in a boating accident, a big boat accident or something. But he was there.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking about him today because he carried that beautiful banner with pictures of everyone who was lost, and took photos of it and
Yeah,
everywhere significant.
I think it was like 300 kids or something that died.
Yeah,
There's a big barge or something ran into a
yeah, it was
passenger ship.
significant. I'll have to look into that
Hmm.
to dig up the memory because it really was significant.
Yeah, it was really neat.
Yeah.
But yeah, Shelter Cove, that was where you came along and provided again, yet again.
I remember seeing Monica at the showers. They were good showers.
But it was like a pay per minute kind of deal. Like it was, you didn't get very long, as I recall. So I don't think I even bothered. And I was just in such a foul mood because my shin was hurting. But
Yeah.
I think more than that, it was just like, I'm going to be the reason our trip ends. Like, this is going to be bad. And it's going to get worse. Like, it's because it really felt like it was going to get worse.
I appreciate in the book kind of getting inside your head there because I had no idea that
Hmm.
any of that was that was crossing your mind. Like I could see you had something going on, but just imagining you being the end would seem so unlikely with everything I could see. So,
Right up until that moment, I felt like it was going to be somebody else, but then all of a sudden I thought it's going to be me. I can remember like I spent the whole night, next night in the tent, just thinking, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. We are going home. It didn't help that it was in that stretch where we started to run into people that were full of advice about how we needed to flip down to Lone Pine and walk north to get the highest elevation in the Sierra out of the way
yeah.
first. Did you run into that too? Into people offering advice in that direction?
A little bit here and there. Admittedly, I wasn't having a whole lot of conversations with northbounders. I was too busy counting how many I was passing because it was a
Yeah,
lot.
you and Georgie.
Yeah,
Ah, that's what she
I
was
was in good
doing.
company with Georgie. There was one day that was like it was like 90. It was so many. Which the trail's long, but it's only so wide. So you're gonna pass everybody. But yeah, it was significant. So I think I was kind of in a rush to get through there just to be in my own world again. I think in that sense I kind of liked being alone.
Were you starting to track people's footprints by then? Were you recognizing people's footprints?
I that's a good question. Um, I don't think so, not yet. Um, did Henry have fresh foams the whole way?
He did.
He did? Okay.
He had fresh foams, and so did Columbus. Columbus also had fresh foams. And so,
Oh, okay. So yeah, I know Henry's were definitely of everybody's. Those fresh rooms were the most
mm-hmm,
distinct shoes to
mm,
track. And then almost
mm-hmm.
everybody had ultras, so those didn't really stand out. But I think it was like Southern Oregon when I really started to track because that's when it started getting drier and less pine needly and more dirty. From my memory.
I think you're probably
For what
right
that's
because
worth.
those northbounders were covering a lot of the tracks as they were walking. So even though it wasn't raining, it was hard to
Hmm.
keep the footprints identified,
That's
but we were sure Columbus was far enough ahead of us by then that we weren't seeing his.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds about right. I know the part where I really remember tracking footprints in particular was way down south in the northern end of the
Hmm.
Sierra and the section
Yeah,
called the Meat
yeah.
Grinder. That's
Interesting.
where I mean, I only passed one other person, so their footprints when it started I was able to, do the math between when I saw them and approximately how fast we were moving, so I could see, when the footprints changed, and that was helpful. It was the little things. I was very alone in that section, so the footprints were helpful.
Yeah. Well, we ran into you above Syed. Was it at the water? Do you remember?
That seems likely. I feel like I walked up on you guys.
You gave us the good news about the cafe. We were so excited to go.
I gave you the wrong news. I was full of bad information.
Well, it couldn't be helped. I no, you just gave us
It
help.
was,
You gave something to aim for, and I got the taste of pancakes in my mind. I couldn't shake it. I was so excited.
yeah, and I just made up this story that, maybe they'd stay open just for this family, because they didn't want to set a precedent for other hikers. And I thought, well, I've got to be part of the family.
And I really
And
do think
man,
that is the day that we decided we would call you Aunt Katie because you thought for sure that the incentive to stay open for 7 people would be far greater than one.
that's so funny. Did you do that? Did you make up stories in your head while
All the
you were
time. Yeah.
hiking? Okay. What a weird scenario to imagine, but I'm so glad I did. Oh,
You were there when we got there. Trouble was there and Rogue, and there was a couple other people, but I don't know if I remember who they were. It
yeah,
was quite a gathering there at the 1,000-mile mark in the state of Jefferson.
that's right. Surrounded. Yeah, but it was Syad days. They were closed for Syad Day. Yeah, so this little so smoky. And that was like one of our first road walks on the PCT too. It was really short, but at least there were some goats. So June and I got to see some goats. Um, but yeah, the town was alive, but they were not making pancakes for us. So we did not get any.
Hmm. We got a little coaching from you that night because you had packed out. Don't remember what it was. I think I make it a cinnamon roll or something, but
As good as I could get in Syad. I mean, Ashland was just a couple days before that, and Ashland had the best food. So I'm not surprised to hear that I was trying to pawn off my heavy baked goods.
you had
'Cause-
packed the good stuff to eat and had extra to share. And we stayed in that
yeah.
wonderful, wonderful campground there that night. You stayed with
Oh
the rats. There were
yeah.
rats nearby and a motor home, one a little bit up the hill, and they were a little bit
Gosh,
loud, as I
the
recall. But
wonders of
then, yeah,
California.
that was amazing. And then that next day was a miserable uphill climb. I say miserable, but it was just constant.
It was hot and
And then
smoky.
we had lunch with you there, I recall.
Yeah, there was that perfect tree at the top of the hill, the perfect nap tree.
Yes, that tree is
I
amazing.
was so glad when I saw you all sprawled out there.
Yeah.
That was the place to
Hmm.
be.
Yeah. And I think we lost you because we were headed from there into Etna, and we stayed a couple days in Etna,
Hmm.
or a few days, and we did a full resupply for the next 500 miles. So I think were you in and out of Etna?
Yeah, I was in and out of Etna, but then when I got to Dunsmuir, which is just next to Castle Crags, right before McLeod, um, then my mom actually picked me up, and we I think I took a 00 with her. So I had a
Mm-hmm.
couple days off
You
just a
did.
little
Okay.
further
Did you
south.
have to skip for that
Um,
fire closure up? But
and
I mean, right after
so
Dunsmuir. Is it right after Dunsmuir? That 30
I
miles?
did not for Etna, so I got through to Etna before that one started, and so I was able to walk all the way to Dunsmuir before having to get off. So there was a 30-mile closure. Ye- Yeah, yeah, it was that 30-mile closure. So that was the one that Peach and Green were walking around.
Or was it before?
But
Yes,
yeah,
walking
that at the
around. Yeah.
time it had never occurred to me to walk on a road around a fire. Which, by the time I got to the CDT, did plenty of that,
That's
but
right.
it seemed impossible and silly on the PCT. So I just
Yeah.
got to hitch around.
You know that? Did you ever meet Twig? Was she
I,
ever
I
out
don't
there?
think I met her, but I have
Did you cross
since
paths with
met
her?
Woody, who I know hikes with Twig. So I know all about Twig in a
Georgie
good
and I
way.
found out this summer when we were hiking with her that she had reached the fire closure just when the trail had been blocked off, but she just went anyway. And so she spent the night out there right near the fire and just
Oh, wow.
just went on through. She was the last one I think to go through before they closed it up, like completely closed it off.
Holy
So
cow.
so she would have been just ahead of us. We
Wow.
skipped the
Wow.
closure and ran into Troubadour. Were you leapfrogging with Troubadour at all in that section?
Um, I can't remember if it was in there, but by the time it's Southern California, I saw Troubadour a lot, and he and I finished on the same day. Yeah, yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, so he must have caught up because he was leapfrogging with us in that section, and then he must have passed and caught
Okay.
up. So then I guess we run into you then again
Wow.
in what Northern California has to be, right?
I It
Briefly.
must be Red's Meadow after that.
Well, let me
Oh,
think, because right at
briefly.
Etna, when you gave Henry his hat back,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. The Marble Mountain Wilderness, that cabin. I camped with you guys at that cabin.
oh, did you really?
Um,
That's so cool.
that I I'm pretty sure because I think I camped with you there, and I think didn't deer come through that night? Look, am
Well, the
I,
next morning there were
I
three little deer we saw, but there may have been that night.
okay, I think I remember that. And I was talking, I think Cake also camped at that cabin, and he had deer try to steal his salty stuff there. So I think that's what I'm thinking of. So we, everyone I love has camped at that
I know
mysterious
that place is
cabin.
crazy. I wonder if it burned in the fire they had this summer. It would be right in that same area.
It's very possible.
So did you like Northern California?
Hmm.
You mentioned that you were upset for your nephew's
Wow.
birthday happening and you were missing out on it. Is a part of that Northern California thing sort of that sort of settling in, like life is happening out there and I'm stuck out
I
here?
did. I liked a lot about it. I Northern California was definitely my hardest sections, where I hit my lows. I know I don't think you got to see many of my lows, but it was me talking on the phone to Cake saying, I hate it out here. Why is this my dream? And he's saying on the phone, you can come home if you want to. No, I'm not coming home. Just really, really low. And that was like outside of Chester. So that was in like the halfway point area. And then outside of Lassen, I just started getting really tired. In Old Station, I went into Old Station and I resupplied at a gas. I was going a little bit slow, so I decided to resupply at a gas station because that's what all the cool hikers do. And so I got the nastiest gas station food, and boy, could my body tell. It was just so hard, and I did not feel good. And so I think even though the sights were beautiful and there was nothing to not necessarily like, I hit my lowest lows there. So it was. And uh, it was a little tough. I think at that point I was starting to get really lonely. Like I was never scared, but just looking for companionship. I know kind of funny, there's one point in the book where you reference very accurately, Monica had asked me how I knew about the upcoming fire closures and what hikers were doing, and I answer enthusiastically, Instagram. And that's because when I was feeling so lonely, I would spend time, you know, with social media to see where everyone was at, and just feeling like I definitely had some fear of missing out with other hikers that were hiking together, and I just felt really lonely. I think that more than anything else, and I was tired. My feet hurt, just like I didn't have any particular injuries, but everything hurt. So
It's not like you're not
there
fun to
was
hike
that.
with. Did you miss people based on timing, do you think? Were you caught in a window in between?
Yeah, I think it's possible, and I think I even though I really like people, I think my general state is often alone. So I think I just kind of revert back to doing my own thing more often than not. Because I definitely got used to my own ritual, just eating when I wanted to eat and stopping when I wanted to stop, and thinking I needed to get further, so going further, but then having, seeing everybody again at 9 a.m. the next morning because I didn't wake up as early. So, or, opposite, where I'd wake up super early and then I'd stop early and still see everybody. So, um, I, I think just similar to some of the pressure you felt to just probably to keep going, to get to the Sierra, to get to the other side. Um, and then, by the time it was in Southern California, it's like, well, keep going because it's getting cold and it's getting dark and there are mountain lions. So I got to keep walking. I think just all these pressures, whether real or fabricated, were contributing to me spending a lot of time alone. Just got lucky when I found you guys. It just Yeah, so I've been feeling pretty rushed to just, keep moving down the trail, but I ran into Skybird and she said, "Oh, there's this place, it's magical. It's called Packer Lake Lodge." And I had no idea how she heard about it. But it was just a very short walk away from the trail, and it was this cute little cabin on the edge of a lake. And there was a woman who ran a one-woman show, little cafe there for the people that came to stay at the lake. And so we got in and had a fresh home cooked hearty breakfast, and then we had a fresh home cooked hearty lunch, and then we had a fresh home cooked hearty dinner, which led to dessert as well. And then the people sitting at the table across the lodge said, "Hey, we have an extra bunk bed in our cabin. Why don't you guys stay?" So I wound up in this just like really amazing Nero, with just the best food, and that felt really good, and to be taken care of by a wonderful caretaker, motherly figure all day. um, and then got a good night's sleep, and I told Skybird, okay, we should stay, but then we have to leave super early, and we did. We got up long before the sun rose, and we were so cold, but we walked and walked, and then we packed out some of the baked goods from the Packer Lake Lodge, and then she also, the same woman, sold baked goods in Sierra City, so I was able to go to that same bakery in Sierra City. So I just had a couple really good instances of good food in that region. I connected with a couple people in Belden. And that was, everyone talks about, Hoosieros in Belden, but we spent a long time in Belden just drinking root beer and not walking. Um, so yeah, I had overall pretty rough, but I had these, these bright spots of getting to hike with people and see people, and that was, really, really great. And then the next people I really saw was coming into Red's Meadow. I ran into MacGyver.
You saw MacGyver in Red's Meadow?
That was great to finally see MacGyver. And then I got to Red's Meadow and you guys were there. I was like, okay, great. We're we're back in the game, guys. I'm with my friends. I
Hmm.
can't remember if I went straight to the Red's
Yeah.
Meadow restaurant or if I ate there the next day, but I did stay the night in Mammoth and I ate some good food there and got a really good resupply. And Golden, who I know you mentioned in the book too, Golden was there and he was doing trail magic and shuttled me around town and helped me get groceries and stay at the hostel and then back up to Red's Meadow. So yeah, I was just kind of back around people again. And oh, and then of course there was a never gonna make it friend in the in the hostel. So um, but yeah, there was just a few folks back there, and I was starting to feel reinvigorated. And we were about to go into the Sierra, which even though there was a storm coming, which was really daunting, but there was also a part of me that had already hiked the Sierra and knew what was coming, and it was like, I know I can do this, and I know it's beautiful, and I know it's worth it. So I kind of had these competing forces, and so those things combined with being with people who I enjoyed being around just helped turn the page a bit on Northern California.
And did you have, at that point, you have family back home aware of and talking to you about the storm? Did you have any input from the outside at that point?
Um, in terms of my family, they were super involved and loving, but I don't think they knew anything about any particular storms, and I was better off for that. However, Cake was definitely doing an incredible job helping me track and give really good weather updates and, provide confidence and inspiration and mostly like support. You should do it. It's going to be fine. So yeah, I had a good source of information and a good cheerleader, but yeah, my parents didn't know there was a storm.
Well, we were really glad that you teamed up with us. It was really nice in the sense of which you wouldn't necessarily know is the relief from the dynamic of being two decision makers between Monica and I. I'm the eternal optimist, and she is what's the opposite? I call her the noticer, right? She's the noticer of the negative possibilities. And so it was nice to have a
Mm.
third voice of some authoritative opinion that was measured. Yours was more measured than mine, and also more optimistic than hers. We became sort of a triumvirate in the decision making as we approached those big decisions in the Sierra. I think we were committed to going. I don't think that was a big decision there. And Golden didn't want us to go into the storm. I think you've read a first revision of the book, so it'll be interesting to see as you
Yeah,
pass through and run into Golden again, if you think, oh, that's more like his voice, which really was seasoned trail hiker who would have reason to know about the Sierra and is offering us some caution. And that's about as far as it went, I think.
yeah, and in context, he totally fit too, because everything is closing for the season. When we were at Red's Meadow, you were the last customer at the general store, and we were the last meal they served at the restaurant, and so everything
Mm-hmm.
was closing.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
It's so eerie.
hmm Yeah, I totally agree. So we knew we were going to be really out there with very few resources. So it was in context it fit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so eerie back there that time of year after everything has shut down. Yeah. And I think one thing I did add to the story that was a little bit embellished was that I added rain one morning as kind of a foreshadowing for the next day. That was the real
hmm
rain.
And then it rained again after the snow, like Ray Lakes.
Yes, a little bit
And
on the way out,
yeah.
going out to
hmm
Kearsarge.
Enough to be scared, but not enough to be a problem. Yeah.
But like, what was going on with you at that point? Like, what was it like? Were you nervous? Because you were walking a layer of clothing lighter than we were.
I was really cold. I just had my shorts for my legs. I have long johns, I think. Yeah, I did that I was carrying, but it was important to me to keep those in my pack so they stayed dry. So that way, like if I got in my tent, I would be able to put on something dry. So I had just my shorts on my legs, and then I had uh, a long sleeve like sun hiking shirt, and then I think I had my rain jacket, my frog tog, and then I had my down jacket, and I wasn't going to pull out my down jacket to get wet either. That's kind of in the same, yeah, that's the same realm as my long johns. So I was definitely cold, but I've always known that as long as I'm moving, it's fine. But it got really cold, and it didn't stop. It was that cold, wintry mixed rain that was just so wet, and I mean, even I mean. And my rain jacket was great, but it was still just totally soaked. Anyone that's been in a long rainstorm knows that only so much, it can only stand so much rain. And I had the cheap, like, frog tog raincoat that's actually plastic. And even that was pretty tired and sad. So, um, yeah, I was, I wasn't scared for our lives. Like I didn't think we were in any like major risk. But I was definitely, um, scared to think about how much longer it was going to last because I just wanted it to be over. It was so miserable. Just how much longer do we have to endure this? But in terms of safety, there was so much to be said for safety in numbers. You guys were always so generous and offered June as the furnace, if crisis struck. And I think you had that experience where, just keeping yourself safe and your group safe. If any of my stuff, like my sleeping bag, got wet, I was sunk. And that actually happened to you, where your sleeping bag and your jacket got soaked through, but you had your family there, and you had lots of gear and warm bodies, and had those safeties. And then, of course, we passed other hikers, like I think we passed Starter and Airborne, who had both like camped out, and boy, they looked cold. I thought I was cold. They looked cold. Yeah, they looked so cold.
I think they
Um,
might have been colder than we were. Did you ever hear Bear
no.
Hair's story about her storm? Oof, it was bad. Her ground pad had a hole in it and she kept hitting the ground. And so she finally just gave up and she set her alarm on her watch and every 15 minutes would wake up
Oh my
to eat an
gosh.
Oreo to try to get warm. When we all came out, Kearsarge, she was in town there. A lot of people had a real bad night. But I think I remember that day in the rain. I think I remember you coaching one of my kids, breathing. And I don't know what was it, June? Probably June. It was
Y-
Georgie.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
definitely Georgie.
That's right.
Ev-
That's right.
Everyone
Yeah.
was cold, but Georgie, I mean, she was just so petite, and
It's so
her,
bad. It
I
was
mean,
a bad
her
night.
clothes were just plastered against her arms and her legs. I mean, just drenched to the bone, and I could see her teeth start chattering, and I just happened to be right behind her, and I just, started, helping her and myself by saying something, just like, count to three, breathe in and breathe out. So I would count one, two, three, and out, two, three, and just trying to help keep, warm air circulating through our bodies, whatever we could do, at least give us something, however minute, to focus on, to get us through even the next quarter mile, because it was getting pretty tough at that point. We'd been listening to the Soggy Bottom Boys on June's Bluetooth speaker for a long time, which was so great. And, it really helped us for a couple hours, but then there was no hope for helping us. We were wet. So, yeah.
Until the miracle fire starter named Kevin woke us up in the morning to a fire.
Oh my gosh. I will never forget that. I don't know how he started that fire. I mean, I understand that he collected dry wood from underneath some wet wood, that he dug for dry wood, but that seems crazy. I have since tried to do that. It did not work. So, I need to learn his ways. Oh,
Yeah, I know.
gosh.
Seriously, he may not exist. He
Yeah.
may be a figment of our imagination. What
It
was it?
it worked out though.
Yeah. So that was fun. You did manage to resist the urge to pull the furnace into your tent somehow. That was pretty courageous of you.
I was too busy crying and I didn't want anyone to see it. So I was
And it
already
was a
just like
cold
you
night.
couldn't tell I was crying because of the rain. And everything was wet anyway, but once I was in the tent, you would have been able to tell.
Well, then the next night, so then we went out. No, it wasn't the next night. It was 2 nights later because the next night we spent in this shelter, some, my gosh.
Which was maybe even more miserable. The only thing that made it better was the comedy of thinking it was going to be better.
No,
Oh
no.
my
And
God.
that JMT hiker who was in there in his tent,
Whole tent.
that was so
Little
bad.
did we know he had the right idea just to keep the condensation from dripping on him.
So the next day, so we go out, we spend the night in that shelter. It snowed like crazy snowstorm walking through that. We're Florida people, so we don't get a lot of that. Henry got certainly hypothermic, and then we finally got everybody
Yeah.
warmed down and whatever. But that next day we woke up, and I don't know if you saw it early,
Yeah.
but I opened that Dutch door early, and I looked out, and it was socked in, and I was like, we're out of here. Like we are going out. And then like an hour later, we walk out there. It's so pretty.
It was, yeah, I mean, I was so happy I had sunglasses and sunblock because it was just, we were in a solar basin of
Yeah.
snow and blue sky. It was so beautiful. What a,
But then, so what I remember it is we spend the whole morning talking and we're like, all right, if we can get dried out, we're going to keep going.
yep.
And we probably changed our minds 6 times. The cloud banks were moving in opposite directions and threatening to cover us.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
we got to that lunch spot and spread out in the sun. You took that great picture where everything is just, it's like an
Yeah.
explosion
Yeah.
of everything. But it was so nice to be in the sun again. It was
Absolute
amazing.
yard
Yeah, that
sale.
was great. That was
Yeah.
fun. And Airborne was such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I mean, we had no option after spending the night in that shelter. Everything was drenched. Everything we owned was drenched. Nothing was spared just because all the contents I mean, how many people were sleeping in there? There was the seven, eight, I mean, there were 10 people in this maybe 14-foot radius stone hut. And I mean, all the condensation in there, I mean, everything was just drenched. That's the wettest my bag and stuff has ever been. So I just felt like we didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice um, to go out if it didn't get dry. So when that sun came, it had good timing because we were able to keep going and pass our bailout point. It was good.
Did you walk out with the faster kids and Airborne?
Um, it's possible. All I remember is being happy. So I don't know. It was just the relief at that point.
I had made a blood oath with June that we would not be walking big miles once we got into Sierra. We'd only walk 14 miles, I think, to get to the top of Muir Hut. But that next day at lunch, the three of us decided we were going big to get out of the Sierra. Then that night we were climbing up
Yeah.
Mather Pass. I was so concerned because we had more clothes than you
Yeah.
did. When June refused to go, I thought, my gosh,
That's
SoGood is going to
right.
freeze if we don't keep going. I think I said to you, think you can go. We won't be offended, but we have to camp here. We're not going to win this battle with June.
So I and if I remember right, I wound up camping with you guys because I also wanted to stop. I was done.
I know,
And
right? I think you said in a reflection you wrote after the
yeah.
trail that they weren't experiencing anything that you weren't either. And
Mm,
that's not something that I was considering. I'm just standing there thinking,
yeah.
this poor other person having to witness all of the madness of our family play out, and she just wants to go. But in reality, you're kind of thinking, no,
Oh.
this is a good spot to stop, June. I'm with you.
Yeah, yeah, I was ready. Yeah, it was great. And the next morning, I remember that was the first morning that Henry and I started singing together, I think.
That's great.
There was
Yeah.
the Hooked on a Feeling
Yeah, that was
song.
cool.
But it was like the maybe the Guardians of the Galaxy remake or something. So that's why Henry knew it. But yeah, and from our respective tents, we could just wake everybody up by singing it. I don't remember who was more annoyed. It might have been June, it might have been Georgie. But yeah, it was great. Just along for the ride. Yeah. and the next day you helped me try to find the hole in my air pad.
That's right at
So,
lunch.
yeah.
Yeah,
hmm
I don't know. Did we find it?
I think so. I don't remember being cold the next night.
It must have worked because the next night was Ray Lakes, right? And then we woke up after Ray Lakes and we're climbing out toward Kearsarge. That's when it started snowing on us again a little bit. But you had the chance to see your family at that. Wait, that's right.
Yeah, so at the top of Kearsarge Pass, Cake hiked up, which I wasn't expecting to see him till the trailhead, but he hiked up and at Kearsarge, yeah, so he met all of us. He's the one that took the picture of us on the pass there. So I was just overjoyed because, Cake was there and I love him and he got to meet you guys. So it was like I I know I'd been talking to you guys about what I'd been hearing from Cake, and then he'd of course been hearing about all of you guys and what we were experiencing. So it was great for you guys to just meet so in the moment, right as we were escaping. And then we descended the pass and then drove into town, and then yeah, my brother and sister-in-law and my nephew were all coming to town into Independence and Bishop to spend a few hours with me. They just happened to be driving through on a family vacation and came out of their way to intercept us. So it was so cool for my family and my trail family and Cake to all be in the same place at the same time. And Cake actually hadn't met my real family yet either. So it was great that he got to meet my real family and my trail family all in the same day. I think he was intimidated, but it worked out.
Intimidated by all of it? Well, yeah, shoot, no joke. That was,
Yeah, that was a lot going on. But he brought us cinnamon rolls and freeze-dried ice cream, and he was good. He read my mind. And then we all got down to Bishop. Somehow we made it. We got beds.
survived and found Bear Hair, who barely survived as well. A lot of people seemed to rough it in that storm. It was a tough one.
hmm
Yeah. And then
I'm glad nothing worse happened. There was all of us were definitely on the edge, but it worked out.
yeah, and I don't think we went out at the same time that you did from Bishop, but we did run into you again at Kennedy Meadow South briefly.
Oh, wow. I'm regretting I didn't get more time with you there. It's
You were on the
crazy.
front porch there when we got there. You were already there. We saw you on the front porch, and then we saw you the next night leaving Kennedy Meadows South right after that, and we camped out there. And yeah, but I think we saw you. I think we saw you on that first night out of Kennedy Meadows South, and that may be the last time that we ran into you. We were starting to slow down, I think, because of Monica's feet. Not deliberately, but they were slowing us down. And the heavy water carries didn't help us, and then we got sick into Tehachapi. Bad sick.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. And I remember Monica's feet got really bad, and I got really scared, and I started researching horse rental services
Wait, on Monica's behalf?
and like seeing if there was anything realistic to like rent Monica a horse so she could finish the trail with you guys. There was nothing realistic, but I sure tried to find something. Um, yeah, I thought June would probably want a horse too, so that well, can you rent two horses and then you can do it? But it was,
How far into this research did you get?
I mean, I looked at several websites and when I maybe called a place to see it's the things that feel the most important. You guys had to finish. It was all of us or none of us. So
Yeah, that was great. I mean, it
like
was great to get to
just
finish. We got slowed down again
yeah,
outside of
I
Cajon.
I was I was really glad um to know of your progress and that the miles kept coming for you. That's good.
And so you were just flying through the
Mm.
desert, though, if you were walking till 9 at night.
Um, well, I mean, I got stuck in town just like anybody else. But yeah, I really tried to keep going. My finish date would have been, wow, that was like the most important date to me ever, but suddenly I can't remember. I think it was like November 18th.
All I know is that yours was a lot of names ahead of us in the log. I'm sure of that.
Yeah,
We found it, we searched for it, and we found it. But you were a lot of days ahead of us.
Yeah, well, I had been on this leave of absence from work, and I thought I would be back by Halloween, and I was not back by Halloween. So they were understanding, but I definitely felt pressure to be back. And you can bet I was going to be done by Thanksgiving because I was not going to miss Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, that's right. It
So
seems like there's a theme. The motivation is calories are so good. How cool.
I had that. Seeing you guys finish, I kicked myself for a long time for not going to the border when you finished. But I thought, well, it's their hike. It's not mine. And you guys had so many people there, and
We would have loved
just
that. That would have been so, so
if
cool.
if you hike it again, I promise I will be there. 'Cause
Columbus and
I
Blue Bear circled back and found us up trail a little bit to the north. That was so fun that they found us.
oh,
Yeah, it was
that's
really
so
neat.
good.
But the kids would have loved it if you'd come. They really would
That's
have
amazing.
loved it. Next time. Next
Well,
time you'll have to do that.
next time, indeed, we'll have to.
Yeah, that's great. This big dream that developed on the JMT that you then accomplished. Did you feel like it delivered?
Yeah, it was extraordinary. It was everything I hoped for and then some. And um, I, want to keep hiking after that. I've since hiked the CDT and, um, got to do that with Cake, which was really fulfilling. And yeah, I think the hard part about dreams is, I don't know if you've experienced this, but no one tells you what to do once you've realized them. Being so goal focused for so long and knowing exactly what you want, and um, you know, I was finally there, but I don't know why there was so important to me, or um, you know, where there was and where the next there was. So I think um, challenging for me, that was the hardest part, is figuring out what to do once you accomplish your dream. Um, but it definitely was the dream, and I uh, just I just love it out there. It's the hardest decision you have to make is, oh, do I want instant mashed potatoes for dinner, or do I want instant noodles for dinner? And that's pretty nice, and just the ability of you know having everything you need to survive another day on your back, and kind of that same thing that first drew me to the JMT was still there, that it's all people out there with a common goal, and all requiring the same skills, or at least determination to accomplish it. And that kind of level footing was um, uh, as gratifying as I'd hoped it would be. So yeah, I'd say a dream a dream realized for sure. How about you? What did it feel like to be at the end of the first one? You kept going.
Yeah, I actually did, got finished with the first one and went to the wall. And I said to Aiden,
Yeah,
it just feels like we ought to keep walking, doesn't it?
yeah.
And she said no, but I felt that way for sure. There's definitely some difficulty readjusting to normal life after the trail. But it's made me think about this. I believe there are layers to reality, with supernatural things happening all around us all the time. When you slow down to trail pace and get quiet enough, you start to notice these things. Back in regular life, they fade away again. Writing the book brought this back to me in an interesting way. My
Mm,
cousin, when she was reading it, would say, Vince, these are miracles happening. Why aren't you saying it? And of course they are. Like, when I read Les Mis, and I think this Victor Hugo guy is crazy. Things like this don't happen in the real world. Like, you don't pull a cart off of a man in a street and then hop a wall into a convent years later, and the gardener inside, who gives you a safe place to hide, just happens to be the man you saved years before. That doesn't happen. Only when you slow down enough and do a trail and you're surrounded by all these people, you realize that SoGood, who is far more appropriately called Aunt Katie, is at the right place and at the right time, just when you need her and just when she needs you. Like, it's just all these things that are happening that are really cool. And so something about slowing down, either, I don't think slowing down makes it happen. I think slowing down makes you notice the things that are happening, and they're very likely happening today, where you are in Logan and where we are in Lakeland, and we just don't notice them because we get too busy. And so that's one thing that I would say that I miss is that kind of a pace of noticing those kinds of things. But of course, it happening. Your timing was. I mean, you told June a June story. You found a beer in a hiker box. You know.
Ditto. Thanks for sharing all that. As yeah, it's just incredible to me the connection. Even though I haven't seen you guys since you showed up in Leadville in 2021 when I was hiking the CDT to say hi, which was incredibly meaningful when you showed up on another hike when I needed a boost. Um, like just even though I haven't seen you since then, just continue to hold you all near and dear. And I think about the next time I'm going to see you all again, but then I keep seeing the kids grow up and oh gosh, they're 6 years older than they were when I hiked with them, which is hard to believe. Yeah, Georgie's not 11. What? She she just turned 18 and June is 21. Wow. Wow.
You have the opposite problem that my brother has. He would text me while he was reading the book and he'd say, "I just keep having a problem making Georgie 11 years old. I keep reading her like she's
Oh
18 years
gosh.
old and 6 feet tall. I'm not giving her enough credit."
No, she will always be the precocious 11-year-old that munches on wild peas. That is her identity in my brain.
There's so much that I didn't get to tell. You have to limit it. I told enough. My gosh, it's 500 pages, but there's all those little things that you know and remember
Oh
and that
yeah.
I forget, like wild peas and
Yeah.
wildflowers. Did the book do any of that for you?
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Yep. Oh, I saw that same note that said wasps, be careful. And just yeah, I mean, I've every step of every piece of trail you walked, I walked too. It was just whether it was right before, right after, and same people, different times, and sometimes it all came together. And I read the book pretty slowly, just trying to absorb it all because every time I read your experience in a place, I have to recount my own experience in that place. And um,
Do you have a lot of journals and notes and things to go back
I
to?
have some notes, and then I have some audio content, and then I have a lot of pictures. So, pictures, some pictures of people, a lot of pictures of places, and I think I even have a picture of the wasp sign. So I was thinking I should text that to you just in case it's the same one. But yeah, oh, absolutely. I'm just, it's great because as time goes on, it's harder to remember, is this actually a memory or is this a daydream or am I embellishing? And because of you and the work you've done to document your own hike, and then of course having all of you to talk to and lean on is I know you can always verify my story and back me up and remind me that it did actually happen, that it was this profound life experience, and it's okay for us to let it be that because it was. Yeah.
It was no small thing, but I was wrestling with it toward the end of the story because it really is. It's almost nothing, almost meaningless. But, on the other hand, every once in a while I'll catch myself remembering that my kids have traversed the country 3 times by foot. And whatever that is, it's not normal,
No, 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 that's for sure.
too.
Um,
Yeah, well, that was one of the inspirations for trying to write it down so that when they forget, they can go back and remember. I tried really hard to give them their own voice in the story. By the time I was done writing, they were getting sick of me going to them and saying, "Does this sound like you?"
yeah, I would love to be a fly on the wall to hear each of the kids talk about their experience to strangers, you know, when it comes up.
Thank you so much. This has been unbelievable for me.
Me too.
Thanks for joining us again today on Pretty Good at Talking. Doing this podcast continues to be one of the most meaningful parts of sharing our story, connecting with the people who made our journey possible and hearing their perspectives. Each conversation reveals new layers to our shared experience, like just recently, talking with Airborne and discovering he was the one who convinced grumpy bears to stay open for us, a detail we didn't know until years later. These conversations remind me that a long-distance trail isn't just about the miles we walk, but about the invisible web of connections that carries us forward. Thanks for listening to Pretty Good at Talking. If you'd like to hear more trail stories or learn about our book, Pretty Good at Walking, you can find us on Instagram at Strawbridge Treks. Until next time, keep walking, keep talking, and keep noticing those little miracles that surround us every day.